Let's jump right into this explainer on what's arguably one of the most critical regulations out there on the water. Rule 14, the head-on situation. Look, whether you're at the helm of a massive cargo ship or just taking out a weekend cruiser, nailing this rule is quite literally what keeps everyone safe. So today, we're ditching the dense legal jargon, we're going to focus on exactly what to do, how to spot the threat, whether it's high noon or pitch black, and we'll even touch on a pretty fascinating inland exception. Let's get to it. Okay, put yourself in the captain's chair for just a second. You're at the helm, scanning the horizon, and boom, there is another vessel approaching right at you. Now think about the closing speed of two boats moving head-on. That distance shrinks incredibly fast. The tension in that moment, oh, it's real. And your correct action here is absolutely non-negotiable. I mean, there's no time to text a buddy or flip through a manual, right? You need an instant, gut-level conditioned response.
So how do we break that tension? Well, Rule 14 gives us a universal, golden action. Simply put, both power-driven vessels must alter their course to starboard. Yep, you both steered to the right. It's a perfectly symmetrical, predictable maneuver, which is exactly what you want to totally eliminate any guesswork. When both captains know and follow this exact rule, that terrifying risk of a head-on collision basically just evaporates.
Now, let's be super clear about exactly when this kicks in. This regulation applies specifically when two vessels are meeting in what we call reciprocal or even nearly reciprocal courses where there's a real risk of collision. Reciprocal is just a fancy way of saying directly opposite paths, like you're heading due north and they're coming due south. But the rule is smart, you know? It includes nearly reciprocal courses too. So if you're just a few degrees off a perfect head-on angle, but your paths are still going to intersect, Rule 14 is fully in play. And remember, this is specifically for power-driven vessels that are actually inside of one another.
And the result of that quick starboard turn is actually beautifully simple. By both steering right, the vessels just safely glide past each other on their respective port sides, port being the left side, of course. If you're used to driving a car on the right side of a two-lane road in the US, this concept is totally second nature. You steer right, you pass left shoulder to left shoulder. It instantly creates this nice, safe buffer zone of open water right between the two hulls.
But here's the tricky part. How do you definitively recognize you're even in a head-on situation, especially when your visibility shifts so drastically from day to night? The rules are actually incredibly specific about the visual cues you need to be hunting for, because getting the identification right is step one before you can take any action. After all, the water looks wildly different at high noon under a blazing sun than it does at midnight under a new moon.
The contrast in how we process these cues is just fascinating. During the day, you're looking for their direct front profile, what they call the corresponding aspect. So if you can see their bow pointing straight at you and you see both sides of their hull looking pretty symmetrical, bam, you are head on. But at night, the physical boat just vanishes into the dark. Instead, and I want you to really picture this, you're looking for those brilliant white masthead lights lined up vertically, flanked by piercing red and green sidelights. If you see both that red and green sidelight at the exact same time, that boat has its nose pointed directly at you. Locking that specific mental picture into your brain is an absolute must for night navigation.
But here is the best part. Whether you spot that daytime hull profile or you catch those specific colored lights floating out there in the dark, your physical action remains exactly the same. You spot the threat, you verify it's a head-on aspect, and you alter course to starboard. The real beauty of Rule 14 is its sheer consistency. It's not asking you to run some complex math problem in your head while you're stressed out. It demands one single predictable maneuver that the other captain is also legally obligated to expect and execute. Okay, so we've got the golden rule down. But what happens when geography decides to change the game? Enter the inland navigational rules, which throw a pretty fascinating curveball for certain waterways. While the international rules generally demand that starboard turn from everybody, Inland Rule 14D actually recognizes that geography and physics can totally change the equation. If you're navigating waters like the Great Lakes, the western rivers like the mighty Mississippi, or other tight, specific channels, river currents dramatically alter how a vessel handles. So in these very specific inland areas, a power-driven vessel that's traveling downbound, meaning they are moving with a following current, they actually get the right of way. Now, why is that? Well, think about the physics. A heavy vessel moving with a fast river current has way less steering control and a significantly longer stopping distance. Physics basically dictates they need the priority here. So the rules put the downbound vessel completely in charge. They get to propose exactly how and where the passage happens, and they're the ones responsible for initiating the maneuvering whistle signals to orchestrate the whole thing.
Meanwhile, what about the upbound vessel, the one fighting against the current? Well, they've got a very different job. Since they're moving against the flow of the water, they actually have much better steering control. They can effectively hold their position against that current. Because of that, they're legally required to just hold as necessary to permit a safe passing. Basically, they listen for the downbound vessel's proposal, they agree to it, and they maneuver safely out of the way or just hold their station until the downbound boat completely clears the area. It makes perfect sense when you think about it.
But let's bring it back to the open water for a second. Ultimately, maritime law provides this brilliantly practical fail-safe for those moments of pure uncertainty, and it's found right there in Rule 14C. It states, quote, "When a vessel is in any doubt as to whether such a situation exists, she shall assume that it does exist and act accordingly." Guys, this is quite frankly one of the most important sentences in all of the navigation rules. It completely removes the mortal danger of hesitation.
So, the major takeaway is this. If you're staring through a thick fog, or you're looking at some confusing, messy cluster of lights out there in the dark, and you have even a sliver of doubt whether you're in a head-on crossing or something else entirely, you must assume you are in a head-on situation. And by assuming it exists, you immediately execute that starboard turn to safety. It's literally a built-in survival mechanism. It tells us that taking defensive action is always preferable to sitting there doing some risky analysis while a boat is bearing down on you.
We've covered the core mechanics, we've talked through those critical visual cues for both day and night, we explored that inland river exception, and we wrapped up with the ultimate rule of dot. So, the next time you find yourself steering a vessel, staring down a reciprocal course, I want you to remember the simple life-saving logic we covered in this explainer. Ask yourself, when doubt inevitably creeps in out there on the open water, will you be ready to decisively turn to starboard? Stay safe out there, trust the rules, and always keep a sharp lookout.